What's going on, guys? This is Jack, coach of the Wenatchee Wild Feds, and the season is over for us. We did not make playoffs for the first time ever. So, as a kind of end of season last video, I wanted to do an end of season recap, a team recap of the team. Um, and so, despite not getting into playoffs, this is actually probably one of my favorite teams I've ever used in draft format. Um, I re- last year's team was fun, but it probably wasn't my favorite. Um, yeah, so I just feel like this team was really well put together. It was really well balanced. The only downside to this team, in my opinion, is not having Doublade, which I have talked about multiple times this season. It's just I really love that mon, and it fits on every team super well, and I really like that Pokemon. But other than not having Doublade, I just feel like this team balanced each other out really well. I had a really nice blend of offensive defense. Um, so yeah, without further ado, I suppose let's go into the individual Pokemon. So the first mon I drafted was Scizor. So Scizor is a fantastic mon outside of League format. Inside of League format, it still is really good. However, just because it's really slow, it has that 4 times weakness to fire, and because it's such a top tier threat, opponents always really prep for it. I feel like I did not play Scizor as well as I could have this season. It only got like 2 or 3 kills. For both matches against Jersey, it served just as death fodder. Um, yeah, and I don't know. I really like Scizor. It's a great mon. I did not use it as well as I could have, partly because opposing coaches always just prep for it like really hard, and partly because I just kind of favored other offensive threats on the team or on my team. So yeah, I highly recommend Scizor in draft format. It does have some contention as a tier 1 pick. There are like all the tier 1s, or practically all of them, are just really good picks overall. Next year with no Mega Evolutions, it's definitely going to be much higher, actually, with the lack of Mega Scizor and various others Mega Evolutions. So as a tier 1 pick, it's definitely going to be bumped up quite a bit, assuming, of course, it does get into the if it does get past Dexit. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about Scizor. I mean, regular Scizor has decent bulk, but physical bulk, but it's not great. So it's kind of, you're mostly going to be running it offensive, maybe a Choice Bandit or Life Orb, maybe running Assault Vest. I brought it Assault Vest 1 week. You can bring Defog on it. You can try to bring a more bulky set, but because of that 4 times weakness to fire and combined with the low speed, you're generally going to be running it offensive, in my opinion at least. The next mon I drafted was the Mega Altaria. I love this mon. I've been wanting to use it in draft format since the beginning, and it just hasn't quite fit on any of my teams since then. But I wanted to draft my team this year around it because I just wanted to use it. I finally wanted to get it over with, try this mon out, and it is beautiful. I kind of only ran 2 or 3 sets. I did bring Mix Altaria one time against Rossi, but generally I either brought Bulky Defog or Dragon Dance, sweeping set. You can bring like a Cotton Guard set to be a bit more of like a bulky tank, but it's got, I mean, with the Pixelate in combination with Earthquake on the physical, Return and Earthquake on the physical side, or Fire Blast and Hyper Voice on the special side, opponents just have a really tough time finding a good hard wall for Altaria, especially in draft format when their choices are limited. And then of course it gets bulky Defog. It can function as a cleric with Heal Bell. And it gets a decent move pool, but it doesn't really need it. Just with Fairy Stab, Earthquake, and Fire Blast, you pretty much get coverage for just about anything. And then, of course, if your opponent has a specific check, you can always work around that with the team or with Altaria itself. It's just a really great mod. I'm really sad that Mega Evolutions look like they're not going to be part of draft moving forward, or at least for the foreseeable future. Because I highly recommend Mega Altaria in draft format, just because it's such a versatile mod, and with its natural bulk and defensive typing as well as offensive typing, it can put work in almost every team, and against almost every team in draft format. So yeah, I really like Altaria. It's probably one of my favorite mons on the draft roster this year. Next mon we have is Vaporeon. Bulky Water. This is probably my favorite Bulky Water in draft format, just because it has fantastic bulk. It's generally a bit more tanky on the special defensive side, but with its natural HP, its regular defense is a little lacking, but it can make up for that. So in case you do want to bring a physically defensive Vaporeon, but it also has a fantastic special attack stat in 110, which means that you can bring it pure bulky, and it's still going to have some offensive pressure to spamming Scalds, hoping for burns. It also gets, of course, Shadow Ball, I believe, as well as a couple other coverage moves. And yeah, I just really like Vaporeon. It's aside from stuff like Chansey and Blissey, I think it's the best Wish Passer, and in my opinion, it is the best Wish Passer for stuff that still have an offensive presence. And as you guys know me, I like bulky offense, so I really don't like stuff like Chansey that don't have any offensive pressure at all. So I just really like Vaporeon carrying Wish, Heal Bell. The only problem with it, in my opinion, is it does suffer from 4 move slot syndrome, so, where every week I wanted to bring Wish and Protect, obviously, so that I could be able to heal myself up with Wish. Obviously, you want Scald so you're not taunt bait, and then the last move, it's always a toss-up between Toxic, Roar, and Heal Bell. And every week I felt whichever one of those 3 I brought, I felt myself lacking. Roar is really nice for setup sweepers. Toxic is really nice just to wear opposing bulky waters or other stuff down. And Heal Bell to amplify its effect as a cleric. You can sometimes, if you're feeling confident, drop Protect to get another one of those moves on. But then Vaporeon is really lacking in its ability to heal itself and keep itself in the game in order to continue Wish Passing, because then that reliable recovery gets knocked up a bit. But when a Pokemon's only drawback is having 4 move slot syndrome, that means it's pretty good. And I think it's tier 3, right? Draft tiers. Yeah, for tier 3, it is a top-notch pick. And like I said, it is my favorite bulky water in draft format. Next one I drafted is Celebi. I've also been really wanting to use Celebi for a while in draft format, and it finally just kind of fit on this team. Starting to round out the Water Grass Fire core after I already gotten the Fairy Steel Dragon core as an Altaria. But it's a really nice pick for tier 2. It does get outclassed by Mew, in my opinion, but of course Mew is tier 1, so obviously. But it has a really unique typing in Psychic Grass, really nice offensive pressure. It has a really great move pool. It gets both Nasty Plot and Sword Stance, as well as Baton Pass. It's for a Z Captain, it is fantastic because it gets a really nice coverage moves all across the board. And then it's also a rocker. It can function as a cleric. It does get Healing Wish, one of the few mons that get Healing Wish, which in draft format can be really clutch. And yeah, I don't really think I'll ever draft Celebi again. But for this season, it was really fun to use. I highly recommend it. It's a really nice tier 2 pick. And especially as a Z Captain in draft format, it just functions really well because it can be either physical or special. The only problem I had with Celebi this season is it doesn't really get an ability to boost speed at all. I even looked into some Z moves that have a plus speed side effect, and I just really didn't find anything. I remember one time I really wanted to bring speed boosting Celebi because at +1 it ran through someone's team. I forget who it was. So that's kind of one drawback, is that it doesn't really have speed boost outside of Choice Scarf. But other than that, I mean, it's a base 100 on the board, so it has really nice stats. Of course, it's not exemplary in any one stat, so it's not like it's not a wall breaker. But as a setup sweeper, especially if you get access to webs, that base 100 speed with webs up turns out to be really nice. Set up a Swords Dance or a Nasty Plot, and you're going to start running through the team. It does have a 4x weakness to bug types, which means opponents can bring U-turn, and always just click U-turn on Celebi, because if you stay in, you're dead, and if you switch out, they get the momentum. So that's the other drawback in Celebi, is the U-turn weakness, as well as the no speed boosting. But I still think it's fantastic mon. Like I said, I probably won't ever draft it myself again. But I'm really gonna try it out. Like I said, I've been wanting to use it for a while, and it definitely lived up. It definitely came in clutch in a couple matches. And then rounding out my water grass fire core is Rotom Heat, my personal favorite of all the Rotom forms. I really like Rotom Heat, with its ability to. It only has 2 weaknesses in water and rock, and with its natural electric typing, it can counter those opposing water types that threaten it with the water type moves. It's a really nice defogger with weak to rocks, of course, but it is immune to webs and spikes. That means that, and with its natural bulk, it's generally going to be able to get those defogs off. Unfortunately, it doesn't get any kind of recovery outside of Pain Split, which is a little unfortunate. So it's not going to be able to stay in the game as long as defoggers like Zapdos. But of course, Zapdos is tier 1 for a reason. Rotom Heat is tier 3 for a reason. But for a tier 3 defogger, or a tier 3 hazard remover in general, I just think it's really great. And of course, with that stab overheat, being able to Volt Switch on opponents, being able to status stuff with Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave. I don't know. I've always been a huge fan of Rotom Heat. I used it a couple of seasons, actually my first ever season of the LSBA back in season 3, I believe that was. It did a lot of work then, and it did a lot of work this season. I love Rotom Heat. I don't know much more I can say about it. But yeah, I like this one. Next up is Scrafty. I used Scrafty a bit. I brought it to like the first 2 or 3 matches, and then I didn't bring it at all the rest of the season. Just because it's slow. It has nice bulk, but it has a lot of weaknesses. 4 times weak to Fairy, weak to fighting, weak to bug. I think does fighting resist bug? I forget. I always forget with what fighting resists in regards to bug and poison. It's so weird. But yeah, it gets Dragon Dance, but unfortunately with its slow speed, you're really going to need 2 Dragon Dances, if not 3, to be able to outspeed your opponent's team. Because even at +2, like I think base 130s and above, can still outspeed it or something like that. It can run the bulk up rest set with Shed Skin. But I don't know. I like my setup sweepers to be fast because I want them to be able to outspeed and not take any damage. But I mean, Scrafty is a really nice mon. There were a few matches later on in the season where I thought I was going to bring it. It kind of looked good, but then after running some calcs, looking at different mons, I decided not to. Maybe in a team that's better suited to take on fairy types, Scrafty can shine a bit more. But overall, it's just like as I was going through team preview, setting up my team, Scrafty really needed a couple Dragon Dances or bulk ups to actually put in any kind of work. And then defensive Scrafty didn't quite do as much as I wanted it to. But I mean, it's definitely not a bad mon. For tier 4, it's a really solid pick. But unless I really need a dark fighting type and Pangoro's gone, I don't really see myself picking it up in the future. But it's like I said, it's still a solid mon, and other people can use it potentially better than I could. Next mon I drafted was Lycanroc Midnight. I like this mon. I know it's not super popular among other people, but it's my personal favorite of the Lycanroc forms. Just merely because I love No Guard Stone Edge. Because Stone Edge offensively is just a really solid move. Um, Edgequake is a thing for a reason. Unfortunately, it doesn't get Earthquake, but it does get Stomping Tantrum for that um, plan B, I guess. But running the Scarf, it's at base 82, it outspeeds all of your typical base 80 Scarfers like Chandelure and stuff like that. And with a really nice, respectable base 115 attack stat, you can run it Life Orb or Banded, or even just running it Scarfed. It does put in decent work there. Gets access to Sucker Punch for that priority, as well as some decent coverage moves. Like I said, Stopping Tantrum. It gets Fire Punch, I believe. Yeah, Fire Punch. Dual Chop if you want to hit a Dragon type. And of course, it gets Brick Break as well. I don't know. I really like Lycanroc, mostly, like I said, just because of the No Guard Stone Edge, just because Stone Edge does put in a lot of work, and when you really need it to hit and it misses, that just really sucks. And it's also get access to rocks as well, which is, for a tier 5, I feel like Lycanroc Midnight is a really nice value pick. And my next mon is Nidoqueen. 2 seasons ago, I drafted Nidoking. This season, I drafted Nidoqueen. Both are fantastic. I believe Nidoqueen functions just a little bit better than King in draft format, just because of its slightly better bulk. You can run it offensive if you want to, but also you have that bulky option if you want to bring it more as a hazard setter, because it does get access to Stealth Rocks and Toxic Spikes. And also, Nidoqueen generally hits harder than Nidoking, because since Nidoking is frailer and faster, you tend to want to run it timid so that it can outspeed the opponent's mons. Whereas Nidoqueen, since it's bulkier and not as fast, you tend to want to run it modest, because you can sacrifice that extra bulk. And since you're running Nidoqueen modest, and since there isn't a huge difference in their special attack stats, Nidoqueen tends to hit a little bit harder. Of course, if you brought modest Nidoking, then it's going to be hitting harder, but then you're not going to be as fast. You're going to be outsped by opponent's stuff and killed, since you're not really bulky. For those reasons, I feel like Nidoqueen, it functions just a little bit better in draft. But Nidoking is still a fantastic pick. They pretty much do the same thing. They have Sheer Force. They get pretty much the exact same move set. I don't think Nidoking or Nidoqueen gets anything that the other doesn't. If they do, they're not that big of a deal. Both get access to rocks and toxic spikes. So yeah, just depending on your team, if you want to go hyper offensive, Nidoking is probably your best bet just because of the extra speed. If you're more bulky offensive like I am, or more balanced, I feel like Nidoqueen is the better pick. But both really awesome tier 2 picks. And both in the respective seasons that I had them, put in a lot of work. So I can definitely see myself picking up either or in future seasons. And next mon we drafted after we missed out on the Doublade is Kyurem. And Kyurem was I feel like is really undervalued in draft format, because of course it gets outshined by Kyurem Black, but Kyurem Black is a tier 1, whereas Kyurem is tier 3. Where'd it go? Draft tiers. Yeah, Kyurem is tier 3. Honestly, I could see it being in tier 2. It has a fantastic, it doesn't have great speed, like super amazing, but it has a really nice speed tier at base 95. Outstanding bulk and 125 HP and 90 defense and special defense. But of course it does have that amazing base 130 attack and special attack. It does actually hit slightly harder than Kyurem Black on the special side, but then of course Kyurem Black has the 170 attack stat, which really puts it in front. And of course the better ability in Terra Volt as opposed to Pressure. But Kyurem, I mean, with its really great bulk, you can bring it bulkier with like sub-roost to pressure stall your opponents is really great. as a Z captain, I didn't have it as a Z captain this year just because I wanted to put Dodrio on that. But as a Z captain, it has a fantastic move pool. It gets steel types moves to hit the fairy types, earth power to hit the ground types, and of course the stab, ice, and dragon moves. Outrage for the physical side, Draco Meteor for the special side. Gets Focus Blast also to hit steel types or rock types. It gets psychic coverage for the opposing fighting types that want to come in and hit it with like close combats and stuff. Rock type moves. It just gets a really amazing move pool for coverage options. And then, of course, when it's a Z captain, you can slap a Z move on it for just that a little extra oomph to break through something. Kira would make a fantastic Z captain. But even not running it Scarfed, Specs, Life Orb, Banded, it just puts in a lot of offensive pressure. And with its stab typing as well as coverage moves, and with its offensive stats, it gets a little bit difficult for opponents to consistently switch in. Steel types obviously are the best switch-ins, but steel types generally don't get access to recovery. So after a couple of Specs Draco Meteors, they're not going to be a really great switch-in. So yeah, I really like Kira. I feel like it's really undervalued in draft format. As a tier 3, it's a fantastic pick. As a tier 2, it might have some competition in tier 2, but I don't know. I could definitely see myself drafting this again. Personally, I would have really liked to have Doublade instead of Kiram, but I'm really happy with this pick as well, as a second option. Next one we have is Wobbuffet. So there's going to be some talk next season about whether or not to ban Shadow Tag. Personally, I don't think it's broken at all. For me, Wobbuffet is just like Ditto, where it's a one-trick pony. It has exactly one thing it can do, and if your opponent preps for that and knows how to work around it, then it doesn't put in as much work. Similarly to Ditto, opponents have to kind of think twice about bringing setup sweepers to Wobbuffet, especially Scarfers. Wobbuffet loves to trap Scarfers because then they're not going to be hitting as hard as like Choice Bandit and stuff. And when they're locked into a move, they don't have as many options. It gets exactly 8 moves, 3 of which you're never going to bring: Charm, Splash, and Tickle. Safeguard can be nice. I brought it against Rossi once, even though it didn't end up coming up. But generally, you're running counter Destiny Bond, Encore, and Mirror Coat. I don't know what else I can say. Like I said, personally, I don't think Wobbuffet should be banned. I think it's totally fine in Tier 4. Maybe if people are a little upset about it, bringing it up to Tier 3, I could see it being in Tier 3, but I really think it belongs to Tier 4. Just because it's a one-trick pony. It doesn't do anything except trap and counter. So yeah, but like ghost types are immune to Shadow Tag, as well as ghost types are immune to counter, and dark types are immune to mirror coat since they are fighting and psychic type moves. So as well as you can volt switch and U-turn out of them. So if you're trapped, you can U-turn and switch into your ghost type to be immune to the counter, or you can volt switch into your dark type to be immune to the mirror coat. And then once you're in on the ghost types and dark types, obviously you threaten Wobbuffet with the stab, super effective move. So, and then of course there's stuff like Shed Shell or Toxic, and you can Toxic stall the Wobbuffet down unless they happen to bring Safeguard and they put enough speed on the Wobbuffet to outspeed whatever, which would be weird. Not super weird. I did bring enough speed one time to outspeed Rossi's Aggron for the same thing. I thought he was going to bring Toxic on Aggron for the Wobbuffet, but again, that didn't quite end up happening or coming into play. So yeah, when you see Wobbuffet on your opponent's team, there's ways to work around it. It might, if the opponent plays it well, chances are I'll get one kill, but without any real recovery. unless they can wish pass or healing wish into it. Wobbuffet's eventually going to go down. So yeah, I think it belongs in tier 4. People might push it to tier 3 if they're really upset about it this season. But I mean, it blocked me from getting swept a couple times, but other than that, it really didn't do a whole lot. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on Wobbuffet. And the last one I brought is Dodrio. For a tier 4 pick, there's better tier 4s, I'll admit that. But I wanted a normal type to, because I felt like my team was a little ghost weak. Not really necessarily weak to ghost, but I just didn't have, I had a couple weaknesses and only one resist and Scrafty. So I wanted something to come in on like choiced ghost types. I also wanted something with a little extra speed in 110. Thus far, my fastest mod was Celebi, I believe, at base 100. And I also wanted a bird type, or a flying type, just to get that bird spam in there. So, and I also only had enough points for a tier 4 or a tier 5 before I did down there. So Dodrio was a really nice pick. I didn't end up trading it all this season for a reason. It did put in some work. I find it's a really great Mimikyu counter. One time I had to face Mimikyu, just because it outspeeds and it's a normal type, so it's immune to the Shadow Sneak. Obviously, Mimikyu needs to have its disguise busted for it to put in work. And Dodrio is a decent Z captain. I made it a Z captain mostly because it's a little lacking in offensive pressure. You can slap a choice ban on it, but then you're locked into normal or flying or fighting type moves. But with Z moves, you get Corkscrew Crash, Groundium, I'm blanking on the name, or Fightium with Jump Kick, which is what I generally ended up bringing. So as a Z captain, it has some options, but yeah, I think Dodrio belongs in tier 4. It does get outshined by a couple other options in the same tier. For stuff like if you need a flying type, you can go with Sigilyph, or with I'm looking around. Sigilyph, the only other. There's got to be another flying type. Yanmega even. If you're looking for something with offensive pressure, there's stuff like Incineroar, all of the tier 4 fighting types, Lycanroc. If you're looking for a normal type, Cinccino. Cinccino has roughly the same speed and attack stat and gets a better ability and better moves to complement that ability. So it does get outclassed, but for what I needed to round out this team, it was a good pick. I brought it to a couple times, and those couple times I put in some work. But, I mean, Dodrio is Dodrio, unless your opponent really doesn't prepare for it. It's not really going to be sweeping anything. So yeah, that's my team. Like I said, I think this is probably one of my favorite teams I've ever had, just because everything kind of put together just really complemented each other. I felt like my two defensive cores in Scizor and Altaria, as well as Vaporeon, Celebi, and Rotom, just really complemented each other really well. Scizor and Altaria both the more offensive defensive core. Vaporeon, Celebi, and Rotom picking up the more defensive core, if that makes sense at all. Kyurem, I didn't bring it at all first part of the season. I brought it a couple times later on. I could see myself drafting this again. Like I said, I feel like it's really undervalued. So yeah, that is it for LSBA season 6. 6, right? Oh no, I'm tired. So thanks for tuning in. If you stuck along this week, stuck along this entire time, listen to me ramble about my team. And thanks for those of you who actually watch my videos this season. And hopefully we will do better next time. Bye-bye, guys.